It was a cold, cloudy morning. The wind was strong, and the streets were nearly empty. Outside a small police station, a young boy sat alone on a wooden bench. His clothes were dirty, his shoes didn't match, and his eyes looked lost. He didn't cry. He didn't move. He just sat still, as if waiting for someone. Officer Maya noticed him from inside the station. She walked out slowly, her boots crunching on the wet ground. "Hey there, little one," she said softly, bending down. "Are you okay?" The boy looked up at her. His eyes were big and dark, but he didn't say a word. He just shook his head slowly. "What's your name?" she asked gently. The boy paused, and then whispered, "I don't have a name." Maya was surprised. "No name? What about your parents? Where are they?" The boy looked down at his hands and didn't speak. Maya sighed and gently touched his shoulder. "Come inside, sweetheart. You must be cold." She took him into the station and gave him a warm blanket and a cup of milk. Other officers stared in silence. A child with no name, no words, and no ID. It was unusual. Hours passed. The boy sat quietly near the heater. Maya tried talking to him again. "Do you remember anything? Where you came from? Your house?" The boy looked at her for a long time. Then he slowly reached into his little jacket pocket and pulled out something. It was a small piece of paper. On it was a crayon drawing. A woman in a black robe standing behind a big wooden bench. It was a judge. Maya looked at the picture carefully. "Who is she?" she asked. The boy pointed at the drawing and said clearly, "My mom." The room fell silent. Maya blinked. "Your mom? She's a judge." The boy nodded slowly. "She wears this every day. Black clothes. She tells people what's right and wrong." "Do you know her name?" "No, but I remember her necklace. It had a silver star, and she sang me a song before bedtime. I think she loved me." Maya's heart broke a little. The boy looked so sure, but how could a judge not know her own child? She leaned in. "Do you know where she is now?" The boy looked at the courtroom picture on the wall. "She's in this building. I know it." Maya paused. There was only one courtroom in the building, and only one woman judge worked there, Judge Rima Sharma. She was famous for her strict rules and serious face. Everyone respected her, but she had never mentioned any family. She was known to be single and focused only on work. Maya felt confused. Could this little boy be making up stories? Later that afternoon, Maya brought the boy a sandwich. He ate quietly, still holding his drawing. Every now and then, he looked at the clock on the wall. "What are you waiting for?" Maya asked. "She comes here at 2 p.m., he said. "Who?" "My mom." At exactly 2 p.m., Judge Rima entered the station. She had come for a regular meeting. She wore her usual black coat, hair tied back, and walked with power in her steps. The boy's eyes widened. He stood up slowly. "That's her," he whispered. "That's my mom." Before Maya could stop him, the boy ran forward. "Mom." The whole room froze. Judge Rima stopped in her tracks, confused. She looked at the boy running toward her. "Who are you?" she asked. The boy ran to her and hugged her leg tightly. "I found you. I knew you were here." Everyone stared. Judge Rima looked around, clearly uncomfortable. She gently pulled the boy away. "I'm sorry, but you must be mistaken. I'm not your mother." The boy looked up, confused. "But you look the same. You wear black. You even smell like her." Judge Rima frowned. "I don't know who you are, child." The boy didn't cry. He just stepped back slowly, his hand still holding the drawing. "She forgot me," he said softly. "But I didn't forget her." The courtroom officers didn't know what to do. Rima turned to Maya. "Is this some kind of joke?" Maya shook her head. "He's been here all day. He has no name, no ID. But he says you're his mother." Rima looked at the drawing in the boy's hand. For a second, Something flickered in her eyes, a tiny shadow of recognition. But she quickly looked away and walked out of the room. Maya held the boy's hand. "It's okay," she said. "Maybe there's something more to this." The boy looked at the door where the judge had walked out. "She'll remember," he whispered. "One day, she will." Maya stared at the judge's photo on the wall. Her mind was full of questions. Who was this boy? Why did he believe so strongly? And what secret was Judge Rima hiding? The mystery was just beginning. Maya sat quietly at her desk, staring at the boy in front of her. His big dark eyes were filled with hope and confusion. He didn't speak, but there was something about him. Something about the way he believed the woman in black robes was his mother that made Maya feel unsettled. Why would he think that? The boy had come to the police station with nothing but a crumpled drawing, a few scattered memories, and a strong belief that the judge was his mother. Maya couldn't stop thinking about it. She had to find out if there was any truth to this strange story. After the judge, Rima Sharma, left the station in a hurry, Maya made a decision. She wasn't going to let this go. She had to know more about this boy and the judge. Maybe there was something hidden. Maya was used to handling mysteries in her job, but this felt different. The boy's belief felt real. The next morning, Maya walked into the police station with a purpose. She walked past officers who were busy with their daily tasks and into the file room. She pulled out files on Judge Rima Sharma. The judge was well known for her tough stance in court, but there were no records of her having any family. No husband, no children, nothing. Was this just another lie from a child? Maya shook her head, refusing to think that way. The boy hadn't been lying, not in the way he believed. There had to be something deeper here. She started searching through the adoption records. Maybe the boy had been adopted by a different family, and the judge had been unaware. Maybe there was a connection. But the more she looked, the more she realized how difficult it was to find any clue that matched the boy's description. Her eyes scanned the folders in front of her. As she flipped through them, she came across a file that made her stop. It was an old record from a long-forgotten adoption center, one that had been closed for years, and it had a name that stood out to Maya: Aryan Sharma. Maya's heart skipped a beat. The name Aryan sounded familiar. Could this be the boy's real name? Could this be the missing piece? She opened the file, reading the details carefully. It was a record from a few years ago. A baby boy, named Aryan Sharma, had been placed for adoption after a terrible accident. The file mentioned a woman who had come to the adoption center to give her son up. Maya's eyes widened as she read more about the woman's situation. The boy's mother had been young, scared, and alone. She had been forced to give her son up due to family pressure, and had been told the child would be raised in a safe, loving home. But that didn't explain the boy's connection to Judge Rima. Maya's thoughts raced. The more she read, the more confused she became. The boy, Aryan, had been placed in the orphanage, but the details were unclear. And then, a shocking piece of information caught her eye. A note in the file said that the child's mother had insisted on a very specific thing before leaving him. She said her son would never forget her. She told them that one day he would find her. Maya felt her breath catch in her throat. This was no ordinary case. This wasn't just a child who had been abandoned. The woman had known something Maya didn't. She had known her son would come back for her someday. Determined to find the truth, Maya decided to speak with someone who might know more about Judge Rima's past. She called an old friend, Detective Raghav, who had worked with the judge on a few high-profile cases in the past. Maya needed answers, and Raghav had been close to Rima for years. Maybe he knew something about her personal life that no one else did. After a quick exchange, Raghav agreed to meet her at a cafe. He arrived quickly, his face serious. "Something's up, Maya," he said quietly, sitting down. "I know what you're asking, but you won't like what you find." Maya leaned forward, eager to hear what he knew. "Tell me everything," she urged. Raghav looked around before speaking in a low voice. "Judge Rima was always cold, always distant. She never talked about a family. But there's a reason. A few years ago, before she became a judge, she had a baby. A boy. She had to give him up. Maya's heart sank. But why? Why didn't she keep him? Raghav sighed deeply. Her parents pushed her to give him up. They were ashamed, you know. A young, unmarried woman raising a child. Back then, it wasn't accepted. She didn't have a choice. But Rima, she loved that boy. She always did. She just never spoke about it. So, what happened to him? He was placed in an adoption center. Raghav continued. But things went wrong. The center shut down because of a fire. A lot of records were lost. And after that, no one really knew what happened to the kids. The boy, your little Aryan, might have disappeared into the system. Maya's mind raced. Could Aryan have been the son of Judge Rima all along? She had to find out. Later that night, Maya couldn't stop thinking about the boy. She could see his face so clearly in her mind. The way he pointed at the judge and said, "That's my mom." It had been a heartbreaking moment. The boy believed it with all his heart, and there had to be a reason. The pieces were finally starting to fit together, but Maya knew one thing for sure. She couldn't let this mystery go. Aryan had found his mother. Now, Maya had to help them find each other and uncover the truth that had been hidden for years. The days that followed were filled with questions and confusion. Maya had learned more about Aryan, but the more she uncovered, the deeper the mystery seemed to get. Judge Rima Sharma, known for her cold, serious demeanor in the courtroom, was now the center of this strange puzzle. How could she be the boy's mother? Why had she given him up? And why had Aryan been so sure of the connection? Maya's mind raced, but one thing was clear. She had to get answers. The boy, Aryan, was still at the station. He didn't leave, even though Maya tried to get him to sleep in the small room she'd set up for him. He didn't want to be alone. He kept clutching his drawing, staring at the judge's picture with such hope in his eyes. Every so often, he would whisper to himself, "She will remember me. I know she will." Maya wanted to believe him, but deep down, she knew there was something more to this. She could feel it in her bones. Something about Judge Rima was connected to this boy's past. But the question was, how? The next morning, Maya got a call from Raghav. "Maya, I found something." She stood up quickly, her heart racing. "What did you find?" "I did some digging into Rima's past," Raghav said, his voice tense. "And I found something strange." "What is it?" Maya asked, gripping the phone tightly. There was an old case, back when Rima was just starting out. It was a custody battle, a really messy one. But here's the thing. The woman who was fighting for custody of her son, her name was Priya Sharma. Maya's heart skipped a beat. Priya Sharma. Raghav continued, "Yes, she was Rima's sister. Priya had a son, and Rima had to help her with the case. But things went wrong. Priya passed away during the case. It was a car accident. But Rima never talked about it. She never mentioned her sister or her nephew after that. So the boy, Aryan," Maya said slowly, the pieces beginning to fit together. "He could be her nephew." "Exactly," Raghav confirmed. "I think Aryan was the son of Rima's sister. But after Priya died, Rima had to give him up. He was placed in an orphanage, and his records got lost. No one knew what happened to him after that." Maya sat down at her desk, her mind racing. This was it. This was the missing piece of the puzzle. Aryan wasn't just any boy. He was Rima's nephew. She had lost her sister and, in her grief, made the hardest decision of her life to give up her sister's son. But now, all these years later, Aryan had found her. Maya knew what she had to do next. She had to get Rima to face the truth. She had to bring the two together. But how could she get the judge to open up about a past she had buried for so long? That afternoon, Maya called Rima to meet her at the station. She told her it was important, but didn't go into detail. Rima arrived right on time, her usual serious expression on her face. She walked into the room with authority, but there was a slight nervousness in her steps. "Maya, what is this about?" Rima asked, her voice calm but strained. "I think you already know," Maya said, standing up. She looked at the judge with sympathy. "This isn't just about a boy who doesn't have a name. This is about a family that's been broken for years." Rima's face paled. "What are you talking about?" Maya sat down across from her. "I've spoken to Raghav. I've looked into your past. Rima, Aryan is your nephew. Your sister, Priya, passed away, and you made the decision to give him up. You've kept this a secret for so long. But now he's here. He's been looking for you." Rima's eyes flickered with pain, then quickly hardened. She stood up, her fists clenched. "No," she said sharply. "You don't know what you're talking about. Aryan is not my responsibility anymore. I did what I had to do." Maya stood too, taking a step closer. "Rima, you don't have to hide anymore. He found you. He's waiting for you." Rima's eyes flickered to the window, where she could see the boy sitting outside, waiting. Her face softened for just a moment before she turned away. "I never wanted to be reminded of that time," she whispered. "It was too painful. Losing Priya. I couldn't bear it. I thought if I let go of Aryan, it would be easier. I thought I could move on." Maya took a deep breath. "But you never forgot him, did you?" Rima's voice broke. "No, I never forgot him. I loved him. But I couldn't keep him. I was young. I was lost. I thought I was doing what was best for him." Maya walked over to the door and opened it. "He's waiting for you, Rima. He believes in you. It's time to face the past." Rima stepped outside and saw Aryan sitting on the same bench, just as he had when he first arrived at the station. He looked up when he saw her, his eyes lighting up. "Mom," he whispered, his voice full of hope. Rima's heart clenched. She took a hesitant step forward, then another. Slowly, she knelt down beside him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Aryan." Aryan looked at her, confused. Are you my mom?" Rima nodded slowly, her tears falling freely now. Yes, I am." The room around them seemed to disappear as they hugged. The boy who had spent years without a name had finally found the family he'd been searching for. The courtroom outside, filled with people, continued without them. But for this moment, everything had changed. The sound of the courtroom buzzed in the background as Rima Sharma sat beside Aryan, her nephew. They had just shared an emotional moment outside the station, one that neither of them would forget. Aryan, after years of searching, had finally found his mother. But the questions didn't end there. There were still so many unanswered things about their past, things that neither of them were ready to face. But now, in the silence of the waiting room, Rima felt a weight lift off her shoulders. For the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe. She had made the hardest decision of her life, and it had haunted her ever since. But looking at Aryan, she knew it had been worth it. He had survived. He had made it. Maya watched the reunion from the doorway. She felt a deep sense of relief, knowing that she had helped them find each other. But even as she stood there, she couldn't help but wonder, what had really happened? How had Aryan ended up in the orphanage? How had everything gone so wrong for this family? She decided it was time to ask Rima the questions that had been haunting her. After a few minutes, Rima stood up, holding Aryan's hand. The boy's eyes were wide with wonder, still processing the shock of the reunion. They both walked over to Maya, who stood with a quiet respect. "Maya," Rima said, her voice soft but firm. "There's more to this story. I can't keep pretending like nothing happened." Maya nodded, sensing that Rima was finally ready to open up. "Tell me everything," Maya urged gently. Rima took a deep breath and sat down, Aryan beside her. The boy didn't seem to understand everything that was happening, but he felt safe beside his aunt. Rima's eyes were distant for a moment before she began to speak. "It all started with my sister Priya. Rima began. She was the strongest person I knew. She loved me like no one else. But when she got pregnant, everything changed. Our parents didn't approve. They didn't want the shame. Priya wasn't married, and they thought that was a scandal. They pressured her to give up the baby. Maya listened intently, her heart aching for the judge. She had always seen Rima as strong, cold even, but now she understood. The woman before her had carried a heavy burden. I tried to support her, Rima continued, but in the end she did what they asked. Priya agreed to give him up. She thought it was for the best. She believed the baby would have a better life in an orphanage. She thought he'd be adopted by a loving family. Rima paused, her voice quivering. But after she gave him up, she couldn't live with herself. Priya couldn't handle the loss. She became distant, depressed, and eventually she was in a car accident. It took her life. Maya felt the deep sorrow in Rima's words. She had known the judge was a tough woman, but now she saw how much pain she had buried. What happened to Aryan after that? Maya asked quietly. Rima looked down at Aryan, who was looking up at her with wide eyes. I tried to find him, but by the time I had the strength to search, he had already been placed in an orphanage. The adoption center was shut down due to a fire, and records were lost. I had no way of knowing what had happened to him. The pain in Rima's eyes deepened as she spoke. I thought about him every day, but I couldn't bring him back. I had made the decision to let him go, and I thought I had to live with that, but I never stopped loving him. She turned to look at Aryan again, her eyes filled with guilt. And then he grew up, alone, not knowing the truth. All this time, he was looking for me without even knowing who I was. And when he saw me in the courtroom, he must have felt something. I don't know how, but somehow he knew. Maya was quiet, processing what Rima had said. It was clear that this wasn't just a simple case of a lost family member. It was a story of a woman who had been forced to make an impossible choice, a decision that would haunt her forever. But now, Aryan had found her again, and that bond was stronger than anything Rima had ever known. I need to tell him the truth, Rima said quietly, almost to herself. Maya looked at her with a sense of urgency. You should. It's time. Rima stood up and walked toward Aryan, who was sitting on a bench near the window, his eyes lost in thought. She walked over to him and knelt down, gently placing her hand on his shoulder. Aryan, Rima began softly, there's something I need to tell you. The boy looked up at her with a mixture of curiosity and hope. I'm your aunt, Rima whispered, her voice breaking slightly. I'm not your mom, but I am family. And I've been waiting for you, just like you've been waiting for me. Aryan's face lit up with understanding. His eyes filled with tears, but he smiled. You're my family. Yes, Rima nodded. I'm your family. The weight that had been sitting on both their shoulders for so many years finally began to lift. Aryan, who had always longed for a family, now had one. And Rima, who had hidden her pain for so long, now had the chance to heal, to be a mother figure to the boy she had lost so many years ago. Maya watched from the door, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. This story wasn't just about solving a mystery. It was about healing, about finding lost family, and about giving people a chance to move forward from their past. Rima and Aryan didn't need to speak any more words. The bond between them was clear. In that moment, everything had changed. The boy who had been lost and forgotten had found the love he had been searching for all his life. And for Rima, the decision she had made all those years ago was no longer a burden. It was a step toward healing, a chance to make things right. As they stood together, Maya quietly left the room. She knew that she had helped them find their way back to each other. And for her, that was the most important thing of all. A few weeks had passed since Aryan and Rima's reunion. The courtroom had long since been forgotten, replaced by the slow but steady healing that was taking place between them. The boy who had once wandered through life without knowing his place had found his family, and the woman who had carried the weight of a painful secret was beginning to live her life again, not as a judge, but as an aunt, a protector, and a mother figure. Maya had been there for every step of the journey, watching their bond grow stronger each day. She had always believed in the power of family, but seeing Rima and Arian together made her understand just how powerful love could be. They were starting to build a new life, one where the past no longer held them captive. Rima sat in her office one morning, reviewing cases, but her mind was elsewhere. Arian was in school now, adjusting to his new life with her, and though it hadn't been easy, he was thriving. But there were still moments when he would ask her about his real mother, and each time, the question would tug at Rima's heart. She knew the truth, but it didn't make the answers any easier. Arian didn't just need a family. He needed to know about the mother who had loved him enough to let him go for his own good. He needed to understand the sacrifices that had been made, even if it hurt. One afternoon, as Rima sat with Arian in their small apartment, they went through a box of old photos and letters. Arian was fascinated by the pictures of his mother, Priya, who had died when he was just a baby. "Aunt Rima, is this really my mom?" Arian asked, holding up a photograph of a young woman smiling at the camera. Rima nodded, a lump forming in her throat. "Yes, that's your mom, Priya. She was a beautiful person, and she loved you very much." Arian looked at the photo for a long time. "She looks happy," he said quietly. "She was happy when you were born," Rima said softly. "But things got difficult after that. And then, after she lost you, she couldn't bear it. She thought she was doing what was best for you, but in her heart, she always missed you. Every day." Arian held the picture closer to his chest. "I miss her too, Aunt Rima." Rima's heart broke for him. He had spent so many years feeling abandoned, without understanding why his mother had left him. Now, with her, he could finally find some peace. Later that evening, Rima made a difficult decision. She was going to take Arian to visit Priya's grave. It was time. He needed to see where his mother was buried and say goodbye in his own way. But Rima knew it wouldn't be easy. As they arrived at the quiet cemetery, Arian stood still, staring at the stone with his mother's name etched on it. Rima stood beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "This is where she rests," Rima said softly. "But she is always with you, in your heart." Arian's eyes filled with tears. "I wish I could have known her." "I know," Rima whispered, "but she would have wanted you to be happy. She would have wanted you to live a full life. And now you have that chance." Arian placed a flower on the grave, his tiny hands trembling. For the first time, he felt like he could finally close a chapter of his life that had always felt empty. He looked up at Rima and smiled, the sadness in his eyes still present, but softened by the comfort of knowing the truth. "I'm not alone anymore, right?" he asked, his voice small but certain. Rima knelt down beside him and hugged him tightly. "No, you're not alone. You have me, and I'll never leave you." Days turned into weeks, and Arian continued to thrive. He started making friends at school, something that had never been easy for him before. At home, he was learning to trust again, to believe in the family that had been given back to him. Rima was not only his aunt now, she was becoming the mother he had always needed. One evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset, Rima looked at Arian and saw not the lost child she had once been forced to give up, but a bright, strong boy who was starting to feel at home. "Aunt Rima," Arian said, breaking the silence, "I don't want to live in the past anymore. I'm happy now." Rima smiled, her heart swelling with love for him. "I'm happy too, Arian. I'm proud of you." Months later, Rima made another decision. She was going to adopt Arian officially. It was something that had always been in her heart, but now she wanted to make it legal. She wanted Arian to have a future that was secure, a future that was built on love and trust. She stood in front of her colleagues one morning, the courtroom now a place she visited only when necessary. Today, however, was special. She had a petition for adoption, and she knew this would change everything for her and Arian. As the judge looked over the paperwork, Rima felt her heart race. This was it. This was the final step in building the family they had both been waiting for. The judge, after a few moments of review, smiled and nodded. "It is my pleasure to approve this adoption," the judge said, his voice warm. "Congratulations, Rima, and welcome to your new family, Arian." Tears filled Rima's eyes as she looked at Arian. He grinned at her, his face lighting up with joy. "We're family now," Rima whispered, her heart finally at peace. "Yes," Arian said, his voice full of certainty. "We are." And so, the story that had started in the courtroom, filled with questions, confusion, and pain, ended with something far more beautiful. A new beginning. Rima and Arian had found each other, healed together, and built a future full of love. They had both learned that family wasn't just about blood. It was about the bonds you choose, the love you give, and the second chances you take. And as they walked out of the courthouse, hand in hand, they knew that no matter what had happened before, they were ready for whatever the future held. Together. Months passed, and life had begun to feel like a dream for Arian and Rima. What once felt like endless uncertainty had now blossomed into something beautiful. Every day, Arian woke up with a sense of belonging he had never known. The pain of the past still lingered, but it no longer controlled him. He was no longer just the orphan boy in the shadows. He was Arian, Rima's son, and nothing could change that now. Rima watched him grow every day, his confidence blossoming in ways she never imagined. He was no longer the quiet, withdrawn child who once believed he had no family. He had become a joyful, outgoing boy who was making friends at school, playing with the other children, and laughing with her in a way that had once seemed impossible. But there were moments, small ones, when Rima would catch him staring out the window, as if waiting for something. It was during these moments that she could see the lingering sadness in his eyes. She knew Arian still carried the weight of his past, and while it was clear he was healing, the wounds weren't gone yet. He would ask her questions about his biological mother, Priya, and it made Rima wonder if he would ever fully find peace. One day, as they sat together on the couch, Arian turned to Rima with a serious look on his face. "Aunt Rima, I've been thinking." Rima put down her book, her attention focused on him. "What's on your mind, Arian?" "I think I understand now why you kept me," he said quietly. "It wasn't just because of love, but because you wanted to give me a chance. You gave me the chance to be someone, to have a family." Rima felt her heart skip a beat. "Of course, Arian. I wanted to give you that chance more than anything in the world. I didn't want you to grow up without love." "I know," he said softly, his voice filled with understanding. "But I think it's time for me to let go of the past. I want to focus on my future now." Rima smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "You're already ahead of me, Arian. You've always known what's best for you." That evening, they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset. Arian's eyes sparkled with a sense of peace that Rima hadn't seen before. There was no longer a shadow of doubt in his gaze. He was letting go of the past, accepting the love Rima had always given him, and forging his own path. As the sky turned from bright orange to soft purple, Arian turned to Rima, his voice full of joy. "Aunt Rima, I want to make you proud. I want to be someone who makes a difference in this world." Rima's heart swelled with pride. "You already do, Arian. Every day you're becoming the person you're meant to be. And I'm proud of you, always." Over the following months, Arian's life continued to flourish. Rima's decision to adopt him officially had been finalized, and their bond became stronger than ever. Arian's teachers noticed his growing confidence, his ability to speak up, and his leadership skills. He was no longer the boy who had been abandoned by the world. He was the boy who had found a family, and that family was everything to him. But there was still one final step in this journey, one that both Rima and Arian had been putting off for a long time. One morning, Arian asked, "Aunt Rima, do you think I'll ever meet my real dad?" Rima paused. The question had lingered in the air for months, But it was only now that Arian had gathered the courage to ask. Rima took a deep breath. Your father, he's not a part of your life, Arian. And while it might be hard to understand now, you have a family here with me. We are your family, and we will always be there for you. I know, Aunt Rima. I'm not looking for him. I just wanted to know. But you're right. You're my family, and that's all I need. Rima smiled, her heart full of love for him. You've always been more than enough, Arian. You don't need anyone else. Later that week, Rima and Arian traveled to the cemetery once more, the place where Priya had been laid to rest. Arian stood in front of her grave, his hand resting on the stone, a calm expression on his face. Rima stood beside him, silently watching as he whispered something to his mother. She couldn't hear his words, but she could see the peace in his eyes. Aunt Rima, he said, turning to her, I think I'm ready now, ready to leave the past behind. Rima's heart swelled with emotion. She nodded, knowing that this moment marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Arian had finally healed, and with Rima's love, he had found the strength to embrace his future. As they walked hand in hand back to the car, Arian turned to Rima and smiled. I'm ready for whatever comes next, and I'm glad you'll be with me. Rima squeezed his hand. Always, Arian. We'll face the future together, no matter what. The sun had set, but the future still shone brightly ahead of them. They didn't know what challenges they would face, but they knew that together, there was nothing they couldn't overcome.